All right, let's get to this. Welcome, friends. How are you? All right, where I am in the Boston area, pollen apocalypse. You doing all right with your allergies? All right, this session is, let me just move my window. This session is all about map listings and reviews for congregations. Now, let me know in the chat where you're tuning in from. How are you? You can also say your congregation, your role, city, whatever you want. I love knowing who's tuning in. This session is a little special in that it's part of my development process for a new free workshop, a new free training I'm working on called Building a Digital Path to Membership for congregations. For everyone in my training community, that means you. So really just foundational information and strategies for congregations to really adapt their way of welcoming people into the congregation and into membership for the digital age. So if you're on my email list, you're set. As soon as the training's ready at the end of the month, you'll be notified. If you aren't on my email list for congregational leaders yet, check the link in the video description or podcast episode, and the training will be for you. My hope is that by just sharing fresh, updated strategy content that's really focused on adapting your membership approach for today's world, that a lot of congregations that are struggling can get reoriented, make some changes in their approach, and be of service. I just want to help all of you get that foundational information. So today, we're talking map reviews and listings. So check this out. I was recently, I went to a congregation nearby, a Unitarian Universalist congregation. I was helping the minister film a video at. And so I'm out at get there early. We're going to meet at the congregation. And I started noticing, this is in an urban area. People walking by, stop, take photo of the church. Another person come by 2 minutes later, photo. No one else, someone else, they're pulling up the map listing. And I'm watching this person walk by the congregation and look at some of the banners, Black Lives Matter, Pride, etc. And they pull out their phone and I can see, like I'm right there looking over there. They have the map app open, like Apple Map, Google Map, and they pull up the congregation's map listing and they're scrolling through photos and going, and it made me stop and go, all right, what does this congregation's map listing look like? Because that's not something I was working with them on, but I was curious. Ends up, they have new minister, but the map listing had a photo of the minister from like 2 or 3 ministers ago, if you count interims. And it's like empty building pictures, nothing compelling that would help a newcomer go like, hey, this is a jam and rocking congregation with great things happening. And, like I want to get involved. So I went home, added some photos that I had from that congregation, including a couple I took that day. I posted 3 photos total to their Google Map listing, Apple Map listing, and it's like Apple Maps draws in from Yelp listing, so I added to their Yelp listing. By the time I was done posting 3 photos, the first photo had 83 views on it, according to Google. Can you believe that? 83. And so like a month later, I get an email from Google saying, your photos are popular. 3,000 people viewed your photos. I'm like, it's not even my listing. I'm just a visitor who shared my 5-star review and my photos of their new minister, of the tech upgrade they did, another shot. And it's like all of a sudden, that's like the featured thing on their listing. So for all of you joining live, watching the replay, I want you to know that we've been talking for a while about how important websites are, websites like the front door to your congregation, etc. But I want you to think about when it comes to a population of people who are using smartphones and are out and about in the world, for the people who are actually right there where your congregation is, like in 3D, that location-based map searching is probably the first thing they're going to do. Like if they're curious about, ooh, what's this congregation about? There, some people might do a Google search, but a lot of people just like pull up in the maps where they are and check out your listing. And so what we need to do, so for all those people, and I've known that listings have been important, but that recent experience, like the volume of people who are seeing that listing and like my photos added to it, got thousands of views in just the first month, blew me away. Like I knew it was important, but I didn't get just how much traffic congregational map listings and Yelp reviews get, or Yelp listings get. So here's what I want you to do. Grab your smartphone, and if you're watching on the smartphone, you can do this after. Grab your smartphone and using Google Maps and Apple Maps, if you don't have Apple Maps, ask someone in your congregation to help you do this. I want you to look up your listing for your congregation. Like, so if you're going to walk, drive, travel to your congregation, like search it up on the maps and look at that listing. And really look at it from the perspective of if someone is a visitor, a potential visitor, they're like something sparked their interest about your congregation. Like they see something interesting happening from afar, or they see your banners, or they see a wayside pulpit, or they're just new to town and you're the closest congregation to their house. And they're like, oh, what's this church or congregation? Look at that listing and the photos specifically. What does it tell you? What does it tell you, the visitor? I'll start again. What does that listing content, the photos, and you can add videos too, what does it tell potential visitors and ultimately potential newcomers and members if things go well? What story does it tell about your congregation? What picture does it paint? So I looked up a bunch of congregational listings before this session, and there are congregations that I know have great children's programs. Look at their listing, any photos of children activities or anything that would indicate that there are children in that congregation or that would be a good place for children. No. All right. These congregations, like looking at 20 congregations, do they have great justice efforts? What causes do they care about? Climate, voter rights, women's rights, like all these things. Can you tell? No, nothing. All right. Basically, buildings. Some worship services where you see inside the building, people there, that's helpful. But if you're like popping up the listing and you're like, what's this place like? Is this for me? Like, am I curious? Am I going to check this place out? Having photos of like what the most compelling things are in your congregation can really help visitors go, oh, check that out. So there's some congregations after the session, I'm going to reach out and be like, hey, I know you have great justice programs. You have great community building, like all these different things. Please, please, please put images of that on your listings. Now, the cool thing about this is some of you may not have direct access to your map listings. One, make sure your congregation knows that map listings are important. Apple Maps, Google Maps, Yelp are really important, and claim those listings as a business. So just navigate to those listings, click claim business if it hasn't been claimed, and then you'll get instructions on how to take ownership of that. So you as the owner of the listing can update it. But besides that content that an owner can add, any person who's on Yelp using Apple Maps or Google Maps can post photos and reviews. So I can review any congregation that I know about, businesses, other things. You can have your members help you crowdsource putting that content together. So if I saw a congregation, if I was part of a congregation that didn't have a listing that reflected congregational life at all, one of the first things I'd do is be like, all right, next board or staff meeting, I'd gather people together and be like, hey, what images do we have from our website, other photos we've collected that we can put on this listing? And maybe it's as the business you share, or maybe people who took the photos, like your active leadership, they share the photos. But to really sit down and be like, what content do we have? Like, chances are your website, if you're using Facebook, your Facebook page, you have the photos that you want on those listings. So just work together as a team in one sitting, half hour, 20 minutes, and pick the content you want to share and get it on there. Now, the questions about that, feel free to let me know if you have questions. And it's great to see you, Wayne, joining us. Anyone else? Who else has joined? Feel free to say hi in the chat. And I'll just say a few more people join. This is some new content that I'm sharing. It's going to be part of my Building a Digital Path to Membership free training. So just click the link in the description to be on my email list. You'll get that at the end of the month when it's ready. So just like start great foundational digital life meets membership development training. Now, with regard to reviews, so again, massive numbers of people potentially could be looking at your congregation's Yelp listing, Apple, and Google Map listings before they actually visit. I know congregations that have had some challenges where 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever, somebody had a bad experience. There's like a different minister then, total different leadership, but on their Yelp listing it says, this is a true story. This person wrote, I went to such and such congregation on Christmas Eve, and the usher collecting the offering scoffed at me when I pulled out a $1 bill and said such and such, and it's like this like long paragraph about just the horrible way this person was treated. So like 5 years ago, that one little review, like 1 star, it was like one of 2 reviews on their Yelp listing. So everyone who's seeing their Yelp listing gets this negative spin. So what can we do? Well, one, you can take the people in your congregation who love your congregation and specifically ask them as part of your outreach efforts, hospitality, membership development, to say, like, you could do this during a service, like during the offertory or some other time. Invite them specifically to help people exploring the congregation by leaving a review, and like put a little QR code in your order of service to the listing you want them to review. And just doing that, like really being proactive about, all right, one of the channels that people come, like the avenues that people come to us through are these listings, Apple Maps, Google Maps, Yelp. So that is for the people coming through those channels, that content and the reviews there are as important as your website. Because if it's not good, if it's say negative reviews and not compelling imagery, not updated photos, they might never get to your congregation. Like they'd be like, what's this place about? Meh. All right, we don't want meh for your congregation. Too important. So if you have questions on all of that, let me know. Because again, I want to get your questions about this. Any feedback you have. Have you used like which app? Oh, that's a good question. If you're looking to navigate somewhere in your local, like wherever you are, which tool do you use? Do you use Apple Maps, Google Maps, some other thing? Like in the chat right now, those of you who are joining live, and of course afterwards via comment, tell me what app do you use for navigating with your smartphone. And let me say hello to who else we have joined. Susan, Carol, great to have you join us. I use both Google Maps and Apple Maps the most. I mean, there are others out there. I think those are the top ones. Like if I'd say prioritize Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Yelp to start. But if you're doing any kind of a periodic kind of communication, like digital profile audit, just knowing like where do you have listings online? Like do a Google search for your congregation or other search and figure out like where are their identities for our congregation online, maybe other apps that you aren't thinking about. Just proactively be like, all right, we have to check these periodically. Maybe a little August or spring cleaning to jazz that up. So I have a question. All right. It's my understanding that photos in public areas are not private. However, it's best to get permissions of all recognizable. So here's my approach. Except for large events that are clearly public events, I tend to only share photos that are like a real wide shot showing lots of people where you can't identify people, or more up close, like where you're seeing people's faces and I ask, I'll say, hey, I'm taking photographs for our congregation's social media, website, etc. Do you mind if I take your photo? And do that. So for me, the culture around permissions is really low. And I just try and I find that if there's, sometimes I'll take a photo to capture the moment and then I'll ask and say, hey, I just took a photo of you doing such and such. Do you mind if we use that for the congregations? And then tell them the purpose. So I think that's helpful. Using the photos of backs of children's heads in a group should be a problem. Yeah. Right. So I think the best thing is to be strategic in that for your listings, you don't need to be like posting constant like photo updates, but who's things like you can have a great photo of staff members. If you have key volunteers doing things like a photo of your welcome table with friendly people there. If there's if you do fun, great things with children and families, figure out like, oh, what's a good representative photo of that? And so say, maybe work with the people who are volunteering or running your children's program and say, hey, do you have content, or images of some of your activities with children, that we can use for this purpose, and you have the photo permissions. Because like our religious exploration, children's programs, generally, they should be asking for permissions up front. So there are things that you can take, say as a member of a congregation, and post your own reviews and add photos, but it's great to coordinate with staff and other volunteers and just make sure you have those permissions. Any other questions? This is kind of a short session. I want you to know that as we're working to strengthen, and I really think of it as a pathway from like where people are online, like all these different places they interact with our congregations, to build a bridge or a path from where they are to being in relationship with our congregation, to be welcomed in the life and heart of our congregations. There are a lot of places where people can fall through the cracks, or there are barriers to getting involved because there's no content there. And so when you think about like stepping stones or a bridge leading from where people are to being in relationship with your congregation, little bits of photo and video and text comments or testimonials, that's like little digital stepping stones. So think about on your listings, Apple Maps, Google Maps, Yelp, or others, and others, are there the photos that show congregational life in an exciting, compelling, accurate way that's going to make people be like, that's what I'm looking for. A church potluck, a game night, working for justice. And then along all these different channels, we can do that. We can turn our YouTube channels into like structure them so that it's like a nice organized page that has different playlists of different aspects of congregational life and a welcome video from people working with membership or a minister. All these different channels, we can do little things. And so it's just important that we pay attention and just think about like where people come into relationship with us, and know that if we don't take charge of that content, add content or take charge of those listings and make it compelling, we just lose people. And we don't want that. People need what you have. So any other questions before we wrap up? What are your roles? Let's see. Some treasurers, people working with membership development. I also want to end by saying thank you for all you do. And just know that little simple things like a map listing seems like it's Apple Maps, whatever. But if thousands of people are looking at that potentially, it may vary depending on where you are, the foot traffic. The congregation that I shared that story with in the beginning, that was in a city in the greater Boston area with lots of foot traffic. So maybe that's a little bit more. All right, now, next week, I'm going to be doing another session. I'm still focusing on the topic. If you have any questions about membership development, communication, how we welcome people into our lives as congregations, but using digital tools, drop them in the chat right now or leave a comment. I'm going to review the chat and the comments on this video over the next few days and see if there are any hot topics. I have all the content that I'm working on for the Building a Digital Path to Membership workshop, which you all have access to. As long as you're on my email list, that's how I'll give you the access, because it's will be on my training site. But I want to make sure that if there are any things that you have questions about that I haven't addressed or I'm not going to address in that training, that I get to them. So let's see, any other last questions? I think that's it. All right. You have a great day. Thanks for all you do. And if you know anyone who might appreciate both this session or the training I'm working on, please share this video or the link in the description with them. All right, have a great day. I'll talk to you all very soon. Dun, 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 dun. And now to go get more allergy medicine. I started off my broadcast saying we're having a pollen apocalypse.